Right, well, let's key Vassos to introduce George. Over to you, Vas.
Next guest is the type of guy who wins Formula One races for a living. He's the type of guy who's getting ready to launch the sport's 75th season. F1 75 Live hits the O2 in London and YouTube at 8 p.m. tonight. So let's flex that Mercedes muscle. It's George Russell.
Let's hear it for George.
Good morning.
Good morning, George. How are you today?
That was a hell of an intro.
Come on.
I love that.
We got all the intros. How are you, George?
Yeah, very well. Thanks. Yourself?
Yeah, great, thanks. Where are you? What are you doing?
I am just overlooking the O2 at the moment in London, getting ready for the live event this evening.
Oh, my goodness, we said they got you there early. You're like the spokesperson for the whole event. That's cool, man.
Something like that.
Have they told you about Take That and Jack Whitehall?
They have told me about that. So looking forward to it. Even my sister's come down. She's very excited about Take That.
It's quite handy if you want to go to this event to see Take That and you don't care about Formula One. It's quite handy to have George Russell as your brother to get you in. George, how has close season been? What's been going on? Let's not get too anorecky about it. We don't want to turn people off. We want to turn people on. So give us the headlines of winter.
I mean, you guys were talking about it before. There's so many changes ahead of a year. But, I mean, from my side, just super excited for a new year. And hopefully we've got a car that we can win races and fight for championships with.
Says here, team principal Toto Wolff said George is ready to win the title, but we have to provide him and Kimi, your new teammate Antonelli, with a quote-unquote fairly fast car. Surely you'd like that to be very fast.
Yeah, definitely want it a bit more than fairly fast, but it's as simple as that, really, isn't it? We just need to go and make a fast car. So,
hang on, but Toto's too relaxed going into the new season with the old fairly chat. Anyway,
no, you got to play it down sometime.
Yeah, no, got it. So, as a fan, if you were a fan and you weren't George and you weren't driving Mercedes-Benz, as a fan with the various changes this year, what would you be looking forward to most? Because I know you are a fan as well. You will always and forever be a fan. But if you were just a fan, what would you be looking forward to most this year?
I think like at the end of last year, the season was as close as it's been for probably 4 or 5 years. And coming into this year, I think it's going to get even closer at the front with ourselves, McLaren, Red Bull, Ferrari. So I think it really can go any way. So I think that's the most exciting thing about the season.
And what about other changes? Because we know about driver changes. Obviously, Adrian Newey going to Aston Martin is a big deal for those who know, as this sort of wizard-like aerodynamicist. Real changes and things like that I'm not aware of? Anything big that's on the radar for the drivers and the teams?
This year, there's not too many changes. And I think that's why it's going to be quite an exciting year, because everyone's just building off what they did in 2024. The big changes come in next year. So a lot of the teams are focusing their efforts onto 2026, and that's why this year I think it's going to be pretty close.
That's interesting, isn't it? Because that could go either way. So I'm not going to say it's like a mufti day at school, because it's sort of the last sort of knockings of a time that's gone by. But if people and teams are, with the budget cap, spending cap, focusing on next year, it could be a bit of a free-for-all this year, as far as F1 can ever be that.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be really interesting because you've only got so much money you're allowed to spend, and you have to decide if you spend it on 2025 or on 2026. So if you spend it more on 2025, you can probably go out and win the championship, but then you'll feel the pain in 2026. So I think for all the teams, they're going to see how they start the season. For us, we'll take a view on how we're performing and then decide if we want to spend a bit more money this year or focus the efforts onto 26.
And we know that tonight's event is live on YouTube, which is very exciting. YouTube is the future. I know that sounds like I'm, an old rusty, dusty fart here, but it remains the future, because we haven't even seen the beginnings of YouTube, I don't think, yet. And of course, your job is you're a social media savvy. You're more than that. You're literate as far as social media is concerned. What is the sort of workload or the schedule of a driver nowadays compared to what it used to be, even maybe as recent as last year, or at least the last 5 years? Because when Jurgen Klopp, when he stood down at Liverpool, he said that the media commitments after each match were just so different to when he began. It was like where there was 3 interviews, there were now 15 interviews. Obviously, you have to embrace that. You have no choice. Can you just speak to that a bit, the colour of that, if you don't mind?
I mean, my first time on Virgin Radio, so it's clearly getting busier
sorry
year
about
on year.
Yeah, sorry.
No, I mean, in all honesty, like even when I was a fan growing up, you only see the sort of the top of the pyramid, and you only see the races, and you think the drivers go home on a Sunday and enjoy the beach back home and get in the sunshine. But the fact is, we probably spend about 40 to 50 days a year, including travel on sponsor events, and I think that's why Formula One is in such a good place now, because they recognize the importance of this promotion and things like this event. Of course, it's time that we're spending that we'd prefer spending in a race car, but you recognise that you need to give back to those who support the sport.
Yeah, the attendance numbers are off the chain nowadays, aren't they? So, and it's all glamorous, isn't it? It's all got its own glamour. I've never been to a US race, but are they completely different? Is it like visiting different worlds throughout the race calendar?
Yeah, it is, to be honest. I mean, every race now is like a mini Super Bowl, and it's really cool that we go to all of these different countries because the culture is so different everywhere you go, and even between the three American races, Miami, Vegas, and Austin, it's just like a totally different atmosphere every time you go there. So yeah, you'll have to come along.
No, I would love to. And so there's always the sort of evergreen conversation about the future of the British Grand Prix, and also Monaco has been brought into that conversation in recent years. How do the drivers feel about both of those? For British drivers, obviously, it's going to be a different story to others, maybe as far as Silverstone is concerned. But everybody hearts Monaco, don't they?
They do, but in terms of Silverstone, if you've not been, Silverstone is like the best race of the season. I think last year it was almost 500,000 people were there over the course of the weekend. I think a few years ago, like Craig David was on, and there was, they're just like a big festival, people camping in the tents. And that's the one thing, being an F1 driver, I don't get to enjoy, watching F1, and all of my family come over, my friends, and they just love the weekend at Silverstone, so that's like a must go to.
Right, tell us about your new teammate. Tell us about Kimi.
He's young.
Coming from you.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite funny because I feel like a young guy. I only just turned 27 3 days ago, but now Kimi arriving. He's a really great chap, super fast. Obviously, got a lot to learn, but I always believe, like, if you've got the speed, you've got the speed.
Yeah.
And that's no different when you get to Formula One. The only difference, obviously, there's a lot of sponsor events and there's the spotlight is on you. But, I've got no doubt he'll keep me on my toes, and it'll be exciting.
That's interesting. You say he's got a lot to learn. So if there were three things that you could pass on to your new teammate, let's forget it's Kimi because it's not fair, it's too personal, that you learned that you didn't know was there to be learned or were there to be learned, what might they be in the first couple of years? It's rookie year, well, first 2 rookie years, if you can have 2 rookie years.
Yeah, I'd say just don't worry too much what's being said, in the media or on social media. At the moment, everybody's got an opinion to be had, and it affects you, especially when you're a young kid and you're reading this stuff. You can have a great race and you see the positive comment and it makes you feel good, but you only need one small mistake and then it changes so quickly. But ultimately, I think that's the way it lies in all sports, to be honest, and in every industry. People like to share their opinion and ultimately just enjoy it, focus on the racing.
Yeah, that's interesting. I was hearing somebody talking about NFL and hockey because thank goodness you don't have a halftime break in F1, because apparently a lot of the younger players, the rookie players, were looking at social media at half time. It's like, what are you doing that for?
Maybe we do it in the pit stops. I don't know.
Yeah, well, please don't do that. That's really interesting, though, isn't it? And of course, you are now the senior driver. Is that official? Is that how it works? Or you're the number one driver? Would that be fair? Mercedes-Benz?
I mean, of course, the two more experienced, but from when I was teammates with Lewis, it was never seen as like a number one and a number two. The team gave us an equal opportunity. We have the exact same car. I think in the past, teams used to prioritize one driver and they would bring all the new bits to their number one driver. But at Mercedes, it's always been totally fair, and when they bring new parts, they always bring enough for both drivers.
And what will you miss from not having Lewis around? Tell us about him as a teammate, as a bloke, because I've met him a few times, interviewed him a couple of times. But what was it like to have him in the same garage as you?
Yeah, it was great to be honest. I mean, for me, when you got a seven-time world champion as your teammate, it's such a good opportunity to show what you're capable of. But then also just learning how he deals with the team, how he kept the morale up when times were tough, how he always gave time to the fans. It was a difficult position for him being as as large as he is, but when it was sort of one on one, he really is a great guy and a bit of end of an era for him and the team. But I think it's exciting opportunity, for him as well and interesting for the sport, but also for myself, for Kimi, for Mercedes. So, I think it's good for everyone.
Yeah, no, of course it is. It's all good, man. It's all good. Change is good. Change is what we're meant to do. Nature says so. And when was the first time you heard a whisper that Lewis might be leaving? And what was your sort of internal response to that?
I mean, to be honest, it wasn't a whisper. I heard, for a fact was the first time I heard it, and it was quite surprising to be honest, because these things usually have a way of creeping out into the media, and it was just a total bombshell. But at the end of the day, these things all happen for a reason, and we're entering a new era in Formula One shortly. The sport's getting bigger and bigger, and as I said, I think it's great for all.
One more thing about Lewis. If you could have one of his, one sort of arrow in his quiver of talent, as well as your own abundant talent, of course, what would you sort of have transplanted from him to you?
He was always very quick in the races, to be honest.
What does that mean? So what does that mean? When Formula One drivers say that, because you all look pretty damn quick to the rest of us, what does it mean when you say he was pretty quick? What does that actually mean, George Russell?
I mean, we have qualifying and we have the race. And in qualifying, it is like a sprint. It's like a 100-meter sprint, and the race is like a marathon.
Right.
So last year, or over the 3 years, I was better in the sprint as such. In the 100-meter sprint,
right.
He was better in the sort of over the course of the race. So
wow.
I probably matched him by the end of last year, but that was something that week in, week out, he was mega strong in the races.
And that's because he's just done it more. So he has that. He's
40 years old, so a bit of experience.
Yeah, and that's in you, isn't it? So he has a load of things that are sort of parked in him permanently, and that gives you. They always said that about Michael Schumacher. He could do all the basics so much better than everyone else. He had the extra capacity to then have a little think on the way round about what else he could do.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, as I said before, I think with driving, you've either got the speed or you haven't. But when it comes to the races, you get that experience. You know how to deal with the tires and the pressure and all of that stuff. But ultimately, when you've got the car beneath you, things are a little bit easier. If you make a rocket ship, there's not quite as much pressure on you, and you can get into your zone and pull away from the rest. So, Formula One's challenging. Everything has to align.
They always used to say about Jensen, didn't they? He was very easy on the tyres. There's a better phrase than that. I can't remember. Smooth, yeah. How does that? Is that just about braking? What is that about? Can't you just be a bit more smooth if you want to be, or is it in you again?
Yeah, I mean, you can be, but for some drivers, if you try somebody else's driving style, you might just go slower. I've always believed you need to follow your own way, and I remember in the tennis players with Djokovic and Federer and Nadal. When they all had 20 Grand Slams each, they were three totally different tennis players, and yet they were three equal greats. But if Djokovic tried to play like Nadal, he would probably be worse off, and if Nadal tried to play like Federer, he'd probably also be worse off. So I think you've got to follow your own way. Your
true nature, in a way. Whose tyres would you not want to be paying for on a regular basis then? Let me put it that
way. Good question. Whose tyres wouldn't I want to be paying for?
Who rags the tyres? Come on.
I've got to be honest. I mean,
who's brutal?
Leclerc's a pretty aggressive driver in that regard. I think that's he's often very quick in street tracks. I think he always pushes the limit a lot. So you see him in Monaco, in Singapore, always performing pretty well. But then in other tracks, it hurts you a little bit more. So again, when you've got 24 races, the environment's totally different week in, week out. So sometimes it favours you, sometimes it doesn't.
George, thanks for being so candid and so relatable in this interview. A couple of questions, a couple of fun questions to finish with. You are such a lovely bloke. You seem to be. I don't know you, but you come across so well. As a parent, what have your parents done? How come you've ended up so beautifully rounded as a human being?
I hope my parents aren't listening, because I won't hear the end of it if I.
Well, it's true. It's got to be true. So come on. I mean, can you, as a beautiful exemplar of a lovely son who's turned out to be a fully rounded, passionate, responsible, inspirational human being. What did they do, man? What was in the box of tricks?
I don't know, to be honest. But to be honest, when I was younger, first my dad was super hard on me when it came to racing, but always told me, like, you got to be a nice person, you got to stay true to yourself, and also when I was becoming more successful, just try and stay humble. And I think those sort of values sort of stuck with me. So that was, I guess that was pretty important growing up. And ultimately, your parents mold you, don't they? I don't think you appreciate it when you're younger, but they truly do.
But in ways they don't realise, really, because it's about what we do. It's not about what we say. And because we've been given this language, we talk to our kids all the time. They just copy what we do. They don't listen to what we say, especially when they've got a crash helmet on.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, another fun question, if you don't mind. I know you've been pre-warned about this, because I wanted to pre-warn, because people ask me this and I always give the wrong answer and driving home thinking, I didn't really mean that. So, favourite new car, favourite classic car, and favourite car of all time, in whichever order you prefer.
Well, obviously I love Mercedes, so my sort of dream car is a 300 SL gull wing from 50s and 60s. That's like my favorite classic car, and I'd probably say that's my favorite car of all time as well. I mean, that's just super cool, super elegant. I've driven one once, super nice to drive as well. And then new car, I'd say if I had a 3-car garage, it'd be the 300 SL. I've got the new Mercedes hypercar on the way, so the Project One. So that's sort of my new racy beast. And then, like a G-Wagon, just, your 4-wheel drive, big car, nice when the conditions aren't so good. So that's like my 3-car garage.
No,
Lando's buying all these cars. He's got like a 30-car garage, but for me, 3 cars is enough.
Fair enough. But that's not your 3-car garage. That's your 3-car Mercedes-Benz classic car dealership. Let's imagine, we've got a minute left. Let's imagine Mercedes-Benz doesn't exist as a brand. All right?
Here we go.
Go on. So
you're putting me right on the spot here.
Sorry, I am. I can't help it.
Right.
I can't help it.
No, I don't really have.
By the way, the gullwing is a genuinely good shout.
I mean that's a genuine one.
The only thing I'd add to that is aluminium body gullwing. You'd have to go for aluminium body.
Yeah, okay. They didn't make many of those, did they?
No, they're super rare. They're like 3 times the price of a normal one. Give us another one. I'll tell you what. Let's make it easier for you. 60s, 70s British practical classic. Go.
60s, 70s
British.
As in,
yeah.
I don't know. That's problem. I'm 27. You really throw me here.
Okay.
No, I can't answer it. I don't know. I'm sorry.
All right. No, fair enough. I'm just going to leave it there because you've been so nice.
I appreciate it.
So you're looking forward to Take That. What's not to like about Take That? Give us the top 5 bands, artists on George Russell's mixtape in his Mercedes of choice, one of his garage of 3 at any given time.
All right, I've got a bit of variety. I mean, I do love Coldplay, Ed Sheeran.
Yep.
But then I also like a bit of like hip hop as well, which is a bit of a curveball.
Excellent.
So, like I used to listen like a bit of Drake as well, like Kendrick Lamar. So there's a bit of a curveball between Coldplay, Ed Sheeran, and those guys.
Right, listen, George, thanks for your time.
Thank you.
It's another one of your media commitments on that ever-lengthening list. Drive safe this year. I wish you well. You're a great British driver. You're a great bloke. Thank you for talking to us.
All the best.
Awesome. Let's hear it for George Russell. He was great, wasn't he?